I want to get into a little bit of Richard Hart Hex stuff. We have some interesting developments the last couple of days. Trying to think of what I want to get into first. Let's get into what actually kind of happened last week because I was intrigued to ask you about this Ewok. So, we talk a lot on here about the Richard Hart Twitter Spaces, and I don't mean the ones that he hosts because he hasn't done a ton of them. Although he did one over the weekend that I really enjoyed. I know you listened to that too.
Yep.
And it was on the eve, or I should say after the day in which he was on another one of these large ones that I think was run by Mario Nawfal or Narwhal or whatever we're deciding to call him, with Kim.com in there and all the usual suspects. And now I wasn't really listening to this one, and I think it may have been about the Twitter files. I'm not sure. We'll get to the Bristology comment on the Internet Money Wallet here again in a minute. But I think it had to do with that. I forget why he was on stage. But anyway, allegedly, Richard was about to be able to speak, had a question for Elon Musk, if you haven't heard of him. And he was in the room as well. And I guess Kim.com muted him after that. I saw Kim.com did actually tweet about this later and just said that, I don't know, he had some specific questions he wanted to ask Elon and felt like Richards was going to devolve into talking about Hex or something. I don't know what he said. Right.
So yes, they were all in the space. Richard was speaking, and they kept tweeting at Elon to come in, and he finally did. And at that point, I think Kim.com had some questions that he wanted to ask. So rather than try to compete with big personalities like Richard, and I believe Jack was there as well.
From Dorsey?
No, from Zen. Jack
Levin. Okay, I got you.
There were a couple guys in there all at the same time, and Kim.com removed them basically as speakers. And then Richard called him out later and said, "Hey, it's funny that you talk about free speech and then remove my right to speak." Kind of one of those things. Kim.com replied with, "Elon says you have bad taste or bad fashion sense. Wouldn't want to be caught in a room with you or even in a chat room or whatever it was." However he said it, it was kind of juvenile, whatever. And I think Richard had even said in one of his, I forget whether it was spaces or online, but basically he said what he wanted to say was, rather than open up everything and give people the choice, that you need to actually promote the things that work. And that was essentially his advice, or would have been his advice to Elon. And he said that's all he really wanted to say. Is that true? Who knows? Richard can get on a rant and go for a while. And especially if Elon would have acknowledged and started that conversation, who knows where it could have gone. It could have been really cool. So, anyway, it's just, that's how it played out. Unfortunately, he didn't have the choice or the chance to interact with them and speak with them. But, there's always next time. Who knows?
Well, the bigger point that this leads me to, because Richard then talked about this on the space he did on his own real late that night.
And Briz actually says he admitted later that Elon didn't say those things about Richard. So Kim,
even if he did, I took that as a joke anyway. I mean, even if he
thought
did,
so too. Yeah. And I didn't care if he did either way. Elon can be a jokester himself, even if he had maybe said something. But it looks like Kim.com admitted that he didn't say those things.
Yeah, so. I took that as Kim.com just making stuff up, honestly. Yeah. But yeah, so the bigger thing I want to talk about here is Richard then on his own spaces was talking to a bunch of Hex folks and essentially said that he felt that the Twitter spaces were pretty much a waste of time, and that to get that message out takes up too much of his time, because you sit there for a couple of hours. And this part I do agree with him on. It's some of these things are like a 6-hour space, and then Richard pops in and he's there for 2 hours and he throws some gems out there, and it's awesome and some cool mic drop moments and all this stuff. But then you got to rely on like K4K or somebody like screenshots the time Richard was on it and then uploads it to their YouTube channel, and it's dumb. It's just, why is that the only way we can do this? Well, no. All I'm saying is, like, why isn't there an easier way? to access his segment on the Twitter space. It's not like as what I just described is fine, but there should be
Right.
an easier way to do that. I think that's
Yeah.
really what he was saying. And most of the people, and I do agree with what I think you're going with this. Most of the people rebutted Richard and said, like,
They did.
please don't stop.
Please
Like, you
don't
know,
stop. Yeah.
yeah, that's what she said. But yeah,
Yeah.
please don't stop. We want you to keep doing these. And I agree. I've said many times on here, like Twitter Spaces Richard is by far the best Richard. And I think it's because he's talking to all these other big personalities and you can
Yeah.
just see how smart he is in the world of DeFi and crypto.
Absolutely.
But what do you think? Because I also, you know how good of a businessman he is too. And if he feels that that's not the best return on his investment, it probably actually isn't, even though we selfishly enjoy hearing it.
Well, I don't know. I've seen the statistics of how his follower account has grown in the past month alone, and I think a lot of that comes from Spaces, especially on the Twitter side of things. Now, if he wants to entertain that whole group of the Louis Vuitton, the Gucci, the Prada, that
Yeah.
if he wants those people, then his Instagram is where that's growing. So, yes, he is getting followers on that side, but really, what do they know about crypto? And what are they going to learn once they, maybe if they do dig a little bit deeper? But
Mhm.
people like that, are they going to? I don't know. I think your better value proposition is in the crypto Twitter, where you've got people that already know what MetaMask is, they already know what Uniswap is, and I think it's a lot more successful to grab that people to have them hear how smart you are.
Right.
That I mean, that's one of the most compelling things about his Twitter Spaces is just listening to him and hearing how intelligent he is. And when people put up an argument and he immediately shoots it down and then tells them why, it's not just an argument. It's here's what I believe and here's why you're wrong. Um,
Mhm.
I think he has gained a lot of respect, and I think it's made a big difference.
Yeah, I agree with you. I personally love them, and I think they're great segments. I guess, like, if the guy himself says that it's not the best return on investment for him as far as getting the word out about how crypto and DeFi should actually work, getting the word out about HEX, as being one of the most superior products in that atmosphere, I can only take him at his word as far as that
Right.
goes. But
So the one thing is too, though, when he's going into those spaces, into Mario's spaces or whoever it might be, he tries to refrain from just talking about Hex.
yeah.
So that is possibly why he thinks it's not as good. But again, I think there's a lot of alpha flow, and I think it gets people to check into who he is, what he's all about, and when they find out, who he is, they see what he's doing. So
Mhm.
maybe in a very indirect way, because they do ride him a little bit about all you talk about is Hex, but he really doesn't. And I don't think he does bring it up, and he tells why it's a better product, it's a better store of value than Brazology's Bitcoin. But I think there's definitely a benefit there to it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, and I think he takes the right approach with that, and I agree with you. I haven't heard him just hawk Hex the whole time when he's in those things. It seems to me that, like you said, well, if anybody who's ever done a Twitter space and did step up, if you step up and sound competent and educated, whatever, you're going to get followers after. Like, as soon as you leave, you'll pick up even a handful of followers. That's just the way it goes. And I do think that would be the right way for Richard to do this. Yeah, don't just go in and hawk Hex, which he doesn't do. He kind of poses the problem with crypto at the moment, poses the problem with middlemen, all this stuff, and then proposes what the solution is, and just kind of gets short of talking about Hex. And sometimes he'll follow up a statement with talking about it. But yeah, certainly people are going to check into him after that. So I'm with you. I don't want him to stop doing it. I love seeing him in those. Um, I like them in general. But yeah, I think we need somebody like him in there. We just have to see if he continues to do it. So
Yep.